Hello everyone and welcome to my The Bold Fans channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. The Forrester Creations CEO office's floor-to-ceiling windows let in the gentle glow of the late afternoon sun, which created long shadows on the polished mahogany desk and the luxurious leather couch that still smelled slightly of last night's mayhem. With her arms encircling herself, Steffy Forrester stood close to the window, gazing out at the Los Angeles cityscape as though the glittering structures could somehow erase the memories that would not go away. Her face appeared much older than her years, and although her dark hair was put back in a loose knot, some strands had escaped. The flight home from Monaco, the long cocktails, the shared pain with Carter, and then the blur of heat and desire that had left them both naked and horrified when dawn light finally arrived were all vividly repeated in her memory. She had just arrived home when Finn hurried in, pleading with her to listen while expressing regret and desperation. She had paid attention. Even so, she had allowed him to hold her. But the secret remained in her chest like a stone the whole time. Walton Carter. Of all individuals, the man who had previously opposed her family and stood up for hope had somehow turned into the only person who could relate to the unique kind of loneliness that results from loving someone who consistently chose the wrong side. They now shared something that had the power to destroy everything. Without a knock, the office door opened. Carter entered and cautiously shut the door behind him. He didn't appear to have slept. There were heavy circles under his eyes, the tie was loose, and his normally polished suit was a little rumpled. After what they had done, he carried 2 paper cups of coffee, an almost ridiculously regular gesture. He placed them on the desk and looked at her for a long time. "Steffy," he muttered. She turned and said, "We need to talk." The motion was deliberate and gradual. "I am aware. I've been thinking about nothing else," Carter said as he moved across the room, pausing a few feet away as though the distance would shield them both. "Daphne returned. This morning. Just after you departed, she entered the office. She claimed to have had second thoughts. She desires to defend us." His voice broke as he finished, saying, "She's talking about adoption, about building a family any way we can." Steffy's gut knotted as she said, "I looked at her and all I could think was that I spent last night with you. Finn is acting in a similar manner. The moon is what he is promising. He's vowing that Sheila won't ever stand in our way." She let out a sour laugh. "He keeps saying I'm the purest person he knows." There was silence between them. If he only knew. Outside, far below, traffic hummed. Everything that had been left unsaid felt heavy in the air inside. At last, Carter took a step forward. "We erred. A horrible, inebriated, foolish error. However, it did occur." Steffy's eyes sparkled. "And now we have to decide what happens next." "What needs to be decided?" "We bury it. We never talk about it again." "It's not that simple," Carter said, lowering his voice. "We go back to our lives and pretend it was a bad dream. You are aware that it isn't. I will always recall how you felt in my arms when I gaze at Daphne. You will think of me each time Finn touches you. That doesn't simply vanish because we want it to," she said, stepping in his direction as her wrath overcame her fear. "So what do you recommend? Do we confess? Destroy both unions in a single afternoon? I would never be forgiven by Finn. Daphne would permanently depart." Carter's jaw tightened. "The kids, the company, everything we've built, gone." He started to grab her hand but stopped himself. "I'm not suggesting that we confess. I'm suggesting we need to exercise caution. Very cautious. Because if this gets out," Steffy said, "it won't. There was nobody present. Nobody noticed us." He gave a long shake of his head. "We clean the office, we act normal, and we move on. You don't realize how tiny this planet is. Ridge observes everything. Everything is noticed by Taylor." Steffy looked away once more, pressing her fingers to the chilly glass. One wrong look, one slip of the tongue, and the entire house of cards collapses. "I can't let Finn go. Not entirely. Even though I'm upset with Sheila, he is still my kid's father. He remains the man I selected. You have Daphne too. She returned to get you. That must have some significance. It does, Carter replied. However, yesterday night also had significance. He turned around. Even if we both wish it didn't. Don't. Avoid romanticizing it. We were inebriated, broken, and searching for solace. Was that all there was to it? Soft and perilous, the question lingered between them. Steffi gasped for air. She briefly recalled how Carter had comforted her when she was crying, how his voice had kept her steady, and how the world had shrunk to just the two of them sitting on that couch. She had felt secure. It had made her feel seen. Then, neither of them had been able to stop the sudden, intense need that had taken over. Carter bridged the gap. He said in a barely audible whisper, "Listen to me, Steffi." With his gaze fixed on hers, he drew a steadying breath. Whatever else happens, whatever we feel or don't feel, there is one thing that cannot change. Then he uttered 5 words that struck like a blow to the body. The words, sharp and definitive, hung in the air. Never tell them the truth. Steffi gazed at him, feeling the full impact of their significance sink into her bones. Never be honest with them. Not Finn. Not Daphne. Not Taylor, Ridge, or anyone else who could turn it against them. The secret would be a personal poison that they would each have to bear alone for the rest of their lives. She muttered, "You can't ask me that." Carter gently but firmly raised her hands to frame her face and said, "I am asking you. I am pleading with you. Finn will never see you the same way if you tell him. Daphne will leave permanently and never return if I tell her. Already, our marriages are in critical condition. The plug would be pulled as a result. Steffi, please." Her eyes ached with tears. "Never tell them the truth. How about us? How do we handle this between us?" "We disregard it," he responded curtly. "We bury it so deeply that it cannot harm anyone else. We return to being co-workers who disagree and agree at different times." "That's impossible. It has to be possible." He wiped away an escaped tear with his thumbs. "We smile at company parties and pretend last night never happened. Because chaos is the alternative. For us both." Steffi withdrew and paced the entire length of the office. "For everyone we love." The unused coffee on the desk was getting chilly. She considered Kelly and Hayes, the life she had battled so valiantly to keep safe from Sheila's shadow. She remembered the look of hope and regret on Finn's face as he entered the Cliff home that morning. She considered how easy one revelation could end Carter's already precarious marriage. At last, she said, "You're asking me to live a lie." Carter said in a hoarse voice, "I'm asking you to protect what's left. I've spent years witnessing individuals in this organization ruin one another with discoveries and secrets. I've been the one with the paperwork, the one threatening, and the one attempting to prevent the ship from sinking. I want to take the quieter route for once." She stopped pacing and turned to face him. "The one that doesn't burn everything down. And if I'm unable to, if I have to tell him because the guilt gets to be too much." Carter's face became almost desperate. "Then you come to me first. Together we make the decision. But please, Steffi, never be honest with him." The yearning in his voice devastated her. "Those 5 words are the only thing standing between us and total destruction." She had witnessed Carter's rage, resolve, and even icy professionalism. She had never seen him in such a state, begging, stripped of all armor. It increased the danger and sharpness of yesterday night's memories. Because something else continued to flare behind the regret. Something she couldn't afford to mention. Finally, with words that tasted like ash, she said, "All right. I refuse to inform him. I'm not going to tell anyone. However, you must make the same vow to me. When the guilt weighs heavily, don't confess to Daphne late at night. Don't slip up in front of Ridge. This is something that we both carry." Carter's shoulders slumped with relaxation as he said, "I promise. On everything I have left." After that, they stood silently for a considerable amount of time, the agreement weighing them down like a new kind of marriage vow that was considerably riskier, darker, and more obligatory. The office was painted in shades of amber and gold as the sun resumed its gradual set outside. Inside, two individuals who had previously been enemies and then, for one careless night, something much closer, started the meticulous process of reconstructing the fences they had demolished. Steffi reached for one of the coffee cups, not so much because she wanted it as it was something to do with her hands. It was a lukewarm liquid. Nevertheless, she took a drink. "We ought to resume our work," Carter agreed. "If we're both absent for too long, people will notice. Downstairs, Daphne is waiting for me. She wants to discuss what comes next. Adoption organizations. Counseling." He chuckled briefly and without humor. "The entire future. And Finn is at the Cliff House, waiting for me to decide if I'm coming home tonight." Steffi spoke calmly, but the turmoil behind her eyes was visible. "I already know what I'm going to say. I'll let him know that we may try again. That Sheila is unable to prevail. Even with this looming over you, our family is worth fighting for." She put down the cup and said, "Especially with this hanging over me. Last night was pointless if I don't fight for it. It was just a mess made by two broken people. It must have a deeper meaning for me." After observing her for a moment more, Carter uttered the 5 words once more, gentler this time, almost like a prayer. "I need to believe I can still be the woman Finn thinks I am." The agreement was sealed when Steffi met his eyes and reiterated, "Never tell them the truth. Never tell them the truth." They departed the office a few minutes apart, just as they had come the previous evening, alone, with secrets too big for one person to handle. When Carter went downstairs, Daphne was there, her eyes full of optimism and hopes for a future without the woman upstairs. After Steffi drove home to the Cliff House, Finn welcomed her with open arms and pledged to improve. The 5 words resounded in Steffi's mind like a heartbeat that night as she lay next to her husband in the dark and listened to his steady breathing. Never be honest with them. The same silent pledge was whispered into the silence as Carter carried Daphne tight across the metropolis. Now, the secret existed between them, unseen and unbreakable, a language that only they could communicate in private. Days stretched into a week. Life at Forrester Creations returned to its comfortable pattern. Gatherings to discuss new collections. Arguments concerning optimism for the future. Ridge's frequent talks about loyalty to family. With cautious neutrality, Steffi and Carter walked past one another in the hallways, their gazes never lingering too long. Occasionally, though, one of them would find an excuse to stay late when the office was empty and the city lights started to shine outside the windows. The night on the couch was never mentioned. They didn't have to. A continual reminder of the boundary they had crossed and the pledge that kept them both on the safer side of it, the 5 words lingered in the silence between them. Even the strongest determination, however, can be tested by the truth. One evening, Steffi found herself alone in the CEO office once more following a particularly trying discussion with Finn on Sheila's most recent attempt to get in touch. In the corner, the couch was vacant and naive. For a brief moment, the weight of the lie was too much for her to take as she collapsed down it with her head in her hands. The door parted. Carter appeared to be pulled by the same unseen thread as he stood there. He didn't have to inquire as to what was wrong. He just sat next to her and waited without making contact. She said, "I nearly told him tonight. He was being so kind and patient." Carter spoke in a forceful, low voice. "I wanted to give him the honesty he keeps saying he deserves. But you didn't." "No. Because of those 5 words," she said, glancing at him. He reached out just far enough to cover her hand with his, saying, "They're the only thing holding me together right now." The brief, nearly chaste exchange contained the entirety of all they were unable to discuss. "Then we continue to hang on. Collectively." In response, Steffi silently vowed, turning her hand palm up under his. "And we never tell them the truth." Unaware of the private conflict taking on in the calm offices of Forrester Creations, the city outside carried on with its never-ending motion. Inside, 2 individuals who had previously found consolation in one another's embraces now found a different kind of comfort in the burden of silence they shared. The 5 startling words had turned into their jail, their shield, and their only chance of surviving the tempest they had caused together. And the truth would stay hidden, dangerous, living, and unheard forever, as long as they both honored their word. The smell of last night's alcohol and the more acute edge of remorse were still present in the Forrester Creations office. 2 people who shouldn't have ended up here sat in startled silence on the leather couch as morning light filtered through the blinds in thin golden stripes. Steffy Forrester's hair was a wild tumble of dark waves that could not be smoothed, and her shirt was half-buttoned. Carter Walton's shirt, which he had been wearing when Daphne's last comments drove him to the bottle, hung open. Their bodies were still entwined from the night, which neither of them could entirely recall or forget, and neither had spoken for almost a full minute after waking. The first to relocate was Steffy. She got up too fast, causing the room to tilt momentarily as astonishment and leftover booze combined. She grabbed her abandoned jacket off the ground and held it to her chest as if it were armor. "This never happened," she stated in an angry, quiet voice. "We were both completely destroyed. We aired. That was all it was." Carter got up more slowly. His normally unwavering eyes appeared disturbed. His mouth opened, closed, and then opened once again. The final 5 sentences he uttered struck him like a punch. Steffy turned to face him and said, "I don't regret a second." In her hands, the jacket dropped an inch. "What did you just say?" With his hands half raised as though he were approaching a wounded animal, he stepped closer. "I have no regrets at all. Not the way you gazed at me when the walls eventually gave way. Not the way you allowed yourself to crumble in my arms. Not what followed. I know. God, Steffy, I know I ought to be on my knees, apologizing to all the values I believed I still upheld. However, those 5 statements are accurate. I don't regret a moment of last night," she said, gazing at him while a flush appeared along her throat and her face began to lose color. "Carter, please," he interrupted, using only one raw syllable. "Don't tell anyone, please. Not Finn. Not Daphne should she return. Not a living soul, not Ridge, not Hope. I am pleading with you. Let's keep this between us. Everything falls apart if this gets revealed. What's left of your marriage? My own. The business. The children. Everything." Steffy let out a brief, weak laugh devoid of humor. "I can't be the reason it all burns. Do you believe that I want this to be public? Do you really think I want Finn to look at me the way I did when Hope kissed him? Do you really think I want my kids to know that their mother, who has been demanding devotion for years, got into bed with the CEO of the company as soon as her husband let her down?" On the final syllable, her voice broke. Pressing the heels of her hands to her eyes, she turned away. Carter walked around the desk and stood in front of her, saying, "I already hate myself enough." The air between them seemed charged and heavy with everything they had done and everything they were yet unable to identify, even though he did not touch her. "Then we concur. We bury it. As co-workers who just so happened to overindulge on the same awful evening, we leave this office. And those 5 words. We never talk about it again." She lowered her hands and asked. Unshed tears and something sharper were shining in her eyes. "You can't say things and then act like they didn't land. I'm not asking you to erase it from your mind," he muttered. "You don't get to tell me you don't regret it and then ask me to erase the entire night. I want you to keep it a secret from the outside world." He let out a sound that was almost like a sigh. "There's a difference. What I said was true. I felt like I had been waiting years to be that person when you broke down last night, when you finally stopped being the family's rock and just needed someone. I didn't plan it. Not because I've been secretly fantasizing. Because you were genuine in that instant, something I haven't seen in a long time. I was also genuine. No lawyer, no CEO. No husband is attempting to use denial and duct tape to keep a marriage together." Steffy's jaw tightened. Just 2 people who had lost everything they thought they were fighting for. She moved to the window and gazed out at the skyline of Los Angeles, as though the far-off structures could provide insight. "Last night, Finn pled with me to return home. He claimed to have picked me over Sheila. He vowed never to repeat that error. and I came close to believing him. I nearly boarded a plane and returned to his arms as if nothing had changed. Then everything I thought I still believed about myself just crumbled when I walked in here and saw you drowning in the same bottle that I was. Carter joined her by the window, making sure to leave space between them. Daphne gave me the impression that I was already a ghost. She stated that she was unable to remain in a marriage that would not provide her with the future she required. After leaving the ring on the desk, she went. After that, I sat here for hours, repeating all of my promises to her and my assurances that we would work things out. Then you entered looking just like me. Broken. Worn out. Done, he swallowed. It didn't feel like a betrayal when you let me to hold you. That's the problem, Steffi said. It felt like the first honest thing either of us had done in months. Felt sincere. And the one thing I can't afford at the moment is honesty. Finn won't be able to look at me the same way once he finds out. He will never have the same level of faith in me when it comes to the children. How can I look Daphne in the eye knowing that I had an affair with her husband as she was packing for Paris if she ever returns and decides the diagnosis isn't the end of the world? You don't, Carter replied. We don't. This is what we carry. Silently. Forever. We return to our lives and behave how everyone expects us to.